He said action, Sarah Drury. Sarah Drury, poet, an extravagant personality, but not more extravagant than me. So what I'd like to ask you, Sarah, is obviously you're a poet. I'd like to know what actually inspires you to write. Firstly, what inspires you to write, and then I'll ask the next question.
Okay. Can I start at the beginning?
You can start absolutely at the beginning.
When I set up Speak Out Scuddy, I mean, that was before COVID. I'd been to Jim Hygo's event, and I hadn't really written before then.
Away with Words, Jim
I wrote
Hygo.
there for one time, and I wrote this poem called Big Girls. And it was more of a performance poem. I performed it. And that went really well, but it inspired me to go home. And there was nothing in this area, nothing at all. So I set up Speak Out Scunny, and that was hard work because nobody was connected. I had to draw people in. And then when Mike and Graham and Captain, that's brilliant because everybody knows about it. And it's a great little community, and it's flourishing, and that's brilliant. But so that inspired me. And then I went through a phase of writing a lot of sort of social commentary, performance poetry, which was long form, So I did that. And then I decided to do a master's. And when I decided to do the master's, I can write in different perspectives now. Like I can write performance poetry if I want to, but I've also learned all the techniques, all the poetry techniques, which you don't need to know because poetry is a personal thing. But I just wanted to learn it, So now I've got all those skills.
Can I just mention, you say poetry is a personal thing.
Yeah.
What I learnt in my studies is that what makes something more universal is when it's really personal.
Yeah.
Because more people connect with it. It's kind of a paradox, don't you think?
Yeah. It has to be something that people can relate to, though. It doesn't have to be too introspective because people have got to be able to hear it and, actually themselves relate to it as well.
And do you think that's more about the need to share that makes you more compassionate human?
I think it's the need to connect with people. And I think some people are very disconnected, but things like poetry can actually help people to learn, and art and music and things, but I think in the curriculum, that's very diminished now in schools, and that's such a shame because I think children are suffering because they're not developing these skills.
So we talked about the writing of poetry and the setting up the Speak Out Scuddy and everything.
Yeah.
And what would be your perceptions or ideas about the difference between writing poetry and performing poetry?
I think there's actually two different kinds of poetry now that I've been doing. I think there's a poetry that's just for the page, and some of that is like, E. Cummings and the way he sets his poetry out with this white space and lineation. So there's that kind of poetry, which I never knew about before. And there's also performance poetry. Now, when you write performance poetry, it's what we call telling. So you're narrating in a way, a story or something, whereas poetry on the page can be a lot more abstract. And a lot of the poetry I've written for this master is very abstract, and it's done well in competitions because I've been shortlisted for quite a lot of big competitions recently. But it wouldn't come across well as spoken word. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't stand up at a spoken word event and read it because people would be thinking, "Well, can't relate to that." It's bonkers. So I do write in two different, like the poems I wrote today, just little romantic poems I wanted to write for myself, sentimental. But I wanted to write them with the music and the rhythm and everything. But a lot of my poetry is very different. So I write in different arenas, depending on the objective of why I'm writing it, really.
I think that comes back to what you said about those poems that you did today for the No Limits Festival.
Yeah. They're very personal,
personal.
Just nostalgic, personal.
Yeah, I understand, but I think people make that, even if they don't know the detail, even if they don't understand all the background behind everything, when you're making that physical connection with those words and sharing it with people, they connect with that feeling and that I don't know, life experience, that narrative that we have in our own minds, and it kind of potentially makes it into like a shared reality, and I think it connects people better, doesn't it?
It connects in different places, like when you or Jim. That's very outgoing. I don't know, it's quite bold poetry, isn't it? So people relate to that, and like Jim's social commentary, they relate to that because he's from working class background, he comments on things like that. But like the kind of poetry I read today is more, people would relate to it sentimentally, rather than in a societal kind of context, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to Sue Hubbard, the poet, earlier, and we touched on the difference between somebody being a poet that it would absolutely completely steer clear of performance.
Yeah.
Even though, ironically, paradoxically, my favourite word.
Yeah.
That particular woman, I've seen her little recordings of her poems that she's done, and she's really emotionally connected to them.
Yeah.
But she still is adamant that she wouldn't be a performer.
But do you think that's because it's very intimate? She's not having an audience. Like when you stand in front of people, can be intimidating for some people, and they don't feel that connection with the audience. Whereas if she's just got the audio, she probably feels the connection because she's hearing her own words, and it's just her in the room or whoever's recording. Whereas you stand in front of an audience, you're exposing your whole soul. If you're reading introspective poetry to a lot of people, it's like one of my friends, she could never stand up, and she's a brilliant poet, but she said it's like making herself raw, and like everything inside her, like having to expose it to the whole world. And that's how some people feel. Maybe Sue Hubbard feels like that, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It's certainly, there's certainly a fear factor involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have that kind of fear factor.
I love it. I just love being out there.
Absolutely.
I couldn't stand up and in a debate, I couldn't stand up and give my opinion. Maybe I could now, I don't know, because I'm a bit older. But when I was at uni, I'd just go really quiet, if they asked me a question. But with poetry, I don't know, I just feel so confident on stage. Isn't that weird? I just get up there and I just love it. I just love it.
Do you think that's because when you're so connected with the work you're doing, that takes the focus, and then the pleasure of that connection you mentioned, kind of, so it's less of a self-conscious activity.
Also, I think I'm so happy and confident with what I've written. I wouldn't read what I wasn't happy with, but because I'm that happy and connected and that I think other people might enjoy it, then, I'm happy to share it with people.
Do you know, it's really nice when someone feels that they can say that they're confident about something, because I think a lot of people might have that mindset that even if they do feel confident about something, that they can't say that. So there's a little irony here, and that is that it's quite brave to say that you're confident about something.
I've got a performing background. I mean, my grandma was a cabaret singer. She was really confident.
Wow.
But I was, from the age of, 7, I performed because I was a musician. And then I went to uni, studied music and education. But then I joined the Halle, the Halle Orchestra in Manchester.
No, I don't.
But it's like one of the big country's big orchestras that do the band. And I joined the choir, so you're performing all the time, and that's professional. So I went all around Europe, performing, Switzerland, everywhere. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And then being a teacher, primary teacher, you have to get up in front of a whole class of children. It's performing. And I think that gave me a lot of the confidence, being a teacher, because you have to perform. It's a performance, especially with little ones, because you've got to get them engaged. You've got to be outgoing and enthusiastic, and it's just so important. Also, don't get anything from it,
Well, it's obviously very clear, and anyone who knows me knows that when I say these things, I don't patronise. I don't do false flattery. That wastes everyone's time. I've obviously seen you perform, and it's clearly performance. It's clearly not somebody just getting up and speaking on a microphone. And this is one of the things that really motivates me to be around a lot of the people that do that. I want people to be out their cages and do what you're doing.
But when I'm reading, when I write, there's a musicality. I don't know if it's but it's always the music and the rhythm are in there. So in some ways, it can be a bit with my poetry. And people might think, and I can write, but I don't feel happy when I've not got the rhythm when I'm writing. Does that make sense? It's got to flow through me. And I think the poems I perform today, it's flowing through me when I read. You can tell because I'm going like that. And it's almost,
of course, Emily, here we are on the final hurdle.
Yeah, but it's almost like I am the poem and I am the music, and it's just, it's just emanating. Does that sound? It sounds really arrogant, doesn't it? But
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it sounds like the truth.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're expressing how it is for you.
For my poetry, and it's just, I'm like a mouthpiece, and it's just coming out from inside of me. That's how I feel, anyway.
So it's not like an exorcism, though, is it, Sarah?
Get the holy water.
Do you like that bit?
It depends. Some of my poetry, because I've just written my dissertation on mental health. When I was I don't care saying this because it's true. And I'm really grateful for a lot of the bad experience I've had, because it's given me so much material. And that's cathartic, because every time you write about something, it's healing something inside. So my whole last assignment, which is about 30 poems, is all based on my sectioning in the psychiatric hospital. But it's not like a woe is me. It's all like metaphorical and abstract, which is how we got to write for uni. So a lot of people wouldn't connect. But if you've had that experience, you would connect with it. You'd understand what was going through my head when I wrote it, the images and things. It's a bit like, you know, Sylvia Plath and how metaphorical she is. You know Sylvia Plath.
I've never heard of her, Sarah.
Oh, you want to? And Ted, you know Ted Hughes?
Ted Hughes, is he the guy that's the bus driver in Hull?
No, he was the guy who was a poet. I don't even know if he's still alive. He was married to Sylvia Plath. And she never got famous until she died. She cast herself. But she was so she was such a good poet, better than her husband, and he was the poet laureate. But because he was so good, she got overshadowed. And it wasn't really until she died and they brought some of her poetry out that she became famous, you see.
Wow, that's like
you should read her. She's like really one of the best.
That's like famous artists, isn't it? That don't become known until they're gone, you know.
Like Van Gogh, he didn't even sell. Would he sell one painting? And it wasn't until his sister-in-law did a big exhibition of his art when he died that he got well known, you know.
Yeah. So, no doubt you'll be at the next event, Speak Out Scunny, as you're effectively the founder or one of the founders.
The founder. I did it all on my own. Yeah.
I'm speaking to local royalty here.
There wasn't. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but there wasn't anything. There was in Hull. There was like Away with Words and Jim, which inspired me, but there was nothing in this area, you see. Not even in this, I think maybe in Lincoln there was, because Gemma Baker used to do something, but there was nothing in Scunthorpe. So I set it up, and it was hard work at first, because nobody knew, you know, I didn't know any poets, and I had to go on the radio, I had to give out flyers. But it's settled down, it's really good now, because Graham and Michael and Kat took it on, but they've really built it up, and because people know about it, it's a nice little community now, you know. I don't have to run around doing all the booking and making slots and things. You can just turn up, and that's. I know you have to because you're from out of town, but it's a really good event. You know, they've taken it into good places. Yeah.
Well, I found, Sarah, that obviously you mentioned Jim Hygo as well with his Away with Words. That's Hull based. Yeah. And obviously your Speak Out Scunny.
When I ran it, he was.
Oh right, he gets about a bit, doesn't he? Jim gets about a bit.
Yeah, but I asked him because he inspired me so much. I said, "Would you come and host?" And he did for nothing. Right. I said, so yeah, he inspired me, and that's why it's because of Jim really, because he inspired me. And we used to go on the radio together, Radio Humberside and things, you know, to advertise it. Yeah.
Oh, was that speaking to Phil White? Was it by any chance?
Yeah. Yeah, and there was also what's his name? The Asian guy, really nice. He had his own radio show, culture show. Can't remember his name. We used to go on his show as well. Yeah.
So I think it's really useful the fact that I've done this interview with you, Sarah, and that you founded Speak Out Scunny, because obviously we're here at Normanby Hall, and so it's relatively local to it, isn't it? Really, it's certainly in the Scunthorpe.
But it all sort of blossomed. People then started doing their own events, and like. I think was Amanda first go to, it wasn't Speak Out Scunny, she went to another event, but then they came to Speak Out Scunny, but then they were inspired to set up with the Rabbit Hole in Brigg, you know, their own event in Brigg, and it's all flourished. It's brilliant. There's so many spoken word events now everywhere. It's great. Great to see that, you know.
It seems particularly active with spoken words in the region generally.
It didn't used to be. There was nothing. 3 years ago, 4 years, there was nothing. Yeah.
It might take off more than Disneyland and Coca-Cola. Let's hope so. It's certainly getting that way, and we've got some lovely people visiting Normanby Hall at the moment who want to see the horses. Ladies and gentlemen, do not feed the horses. Do not feed the horses.
I just think it's wonderful that people are just writing and sharing and, you know, connecting. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Sarah, you I'm sure you know this. It's been an absolute delight, and so Sarah, I see in the real world, not just on camera. I'll obviously be at the next.
I'll be at your drama class.
Yeah. Please do come. Please do come.
Because it's in Hull.
Ah, right.
I said that I didn't see more of it today, but we couldn't come early, you see. It's a shame. I really enjoy, like some people come and they just want to read their poem, but I really enjoy, seeing everybody else's reading as well. I really enjoy hearing what everybody else have written and performing.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
So this is Sarah Drury, as I mentioned, the founder of Speak Out Scunny and poet extraordinaire. And she's everywhere, and she's an actual performance poet, not just a poet, don't undermine that, just a poet, but she's a performer as well.
Do you see a differentiation between like performance poetry and just reading poetry?
Yes, I do.
I do, but people seem to say they're performance when they're just reading it. I get confused whether it's the same thing or if there's like a differentiation, because I think of things like Benjamin Zephaniah, Luke Wright, and people like that, as performance. And button poetry. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
Look at button poetry on YouTube. Fantastic.
Right, I agree with you, because the thing is that the act of moving into a space and reading something from a piece of paper, I wouldn't undermine that. Yeah. But you could say it's a read, and then there's another piece that I think it's more about what you put into it. Yeah. But I don't like to embellish. As an actor, I don't like to embellish. Yeah. I still want it to be the truth. So you could argue, in a sense, that's almost, you could say, well, I could say I could do a piece and it's like I'm just reading it, but I'm not just reading it. The thing for me is I'm reading it to share. Yeah. So I know I mentioned sharing earlier. For me, I'm reading it to share, and that's what makes it into performance for me. So I know there's kind of like a little bit of a waves there on defining. It's like defining art almost. How we
spoken word is a differentiation as well. Yeah. Because spoken word is more telling a story. I think it's great. I love spoken word. Yeah.
And I suppose poetry, all of it tells a story in some way, doesn't it? Like even like you mentioned, abstract art tells a story.
And if you get like old poets, like the poem The Highwayman, The Raven, all those old poets, they're in a way.
The Raven, is that Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe, I'm a fan.
The Highwayman.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've read that one.
It's a long narrative poem. But if you brought those into modern day, they'd be brilliant performance poems.
Stephen Burkoff did a one-man show with, I believe, The Raven and The Telltale Heart.
What was it called?
Telltale Heart.
No, I mean the show.
I think it was just called One Man.
One Man. Oh.
But I've seen it twice over the period of 20 years.
Was it Burkoff?
But Stephen Burkoff, yeah. I saw the first one with a girlfriend at the time, and the second one with a different girlfriend at the time.
Yeah. I have to look out for that.
And if Stephen Burkoff's still alive, if he's still alive and out there, I could maybe see it for the third time with this girlfriend of the time. And so we're going to wrap up now. Okay. But I've obviously, as I've mentioned, been speaking to Sarah Drury, and
it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. Here's Tessa from Nova News at the 2023 No Limits Festival, which has now just about come to an end. So thank you, and catch up soon. Bye-bye. Bye.